Parris, I know you got to go in about 5-10 minutes. Before you go, though, give me your thoughts on Hellblade 2 and the 30 FPS problem.
I might be here longer than 10 minutes in. So here's the thing on this, and I touched on it at the top. I'm not shocked that it's 30 frames on console. And I do blame a lot of that on, and it's not a bad thing necessarily, but I think Unreal 5 is part of the problem. Where's the 60 frames per second Unreal 5 game on console right now? Does it exist? I don't think it does. I could be wrong. I don't think it exists. So I think that's part of it. I think it is tough to get 60 frames per second running on Unreal 5 on this current hardware. Could you do it? I'm sure you can, but you're going to have to make a lot of compromises to do so. Clearly, they want Hellblade 2 to be a visual showcase for them. They want you to look at that game running on an Xbox Series X and say, wow, that's what they want. They're not so concerned about the frames per second. They're concerned about when you look at it, is it really pretty? Is it very immersive? Is it that experience? Is it building upon the experience that you got from the first Hellblade? Not to mention, they've been showing this game since 2019. Let's not forget that part. They've been showing this game since 2019, and it always has been a visual stunner. So imagine, now follow me on this now. We know how social media is. Imagine if they did have let's just say they had a performance mode. So there was a 60 frames per second mode for it.
I know where you're going with this.
You already know where I'm going. The 30 frames per second is super pretty, looks great, everything they said it would be. You already know what's going to happen. People are going to fire it up in that performance mode, visual downgrade. See, it's not what they said it is. Xbox failed again. They didn't get this to what it should be. Now, I'm not saying that is the primary reason they did it, but I guarantee you that that's part of the decision. I promise you that's part of the decision. We want to make sure that it is representative of everything that we've been showing over the past 6 years or whatever it's been that we've been displaying this game. Guarantee you that's part of it. Now, going back to the actual 30 frames per second part of it, I'm going to shamelessly plug the Todd Howard interview we did last year, because I specifically asked Todd, why don't you have a performance mode for Starfield? And whether you agree with what he says, disagree, doesn't matter. He said, because he's the creator, he the one making the damn game, he makes the decisions. He said it was a creative decision for them because that was the best way for them to display that game on console. That's what he said. He said parts of the game does actually run higher than 30 frames per second, but we would rather lock it in at 30 to have it consistent. So we have a consistent 30 frames per second. There aren't any glitches, hiccups, anything. Because the same thing that I just said about Hellblade 2 having a performance mode would probably been applied to Starfield if they did that too. Again, I'm not saying that's the primary reason, but I guarantee you that probably factors into it. And the reason I say all that is to say this. I know people love to pull the screenshot of what Aaron Greenberg said, I believe back in 2020, about 60 frames being a standard on the Series X. Mm-hmm. But then you notice what they never followed that up with.
The 4 days later tweet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like where he clarified that we are not mandating 60 frames. It is up to the creators on what they want to do with the hardware. That's what he said in the second tweet. And the reason I say bring that up is it's not like Aaron said that in 2020 and he's trying to backtrack it now in 2024. He said it basically in real time. Here's the first tweet. Let me clarify it. Now you know. So this information has technically been out there since 2020. Now, I'm not saying it to make an excuse for Xbox, because I have my own grievances, like I said before, about 4K 60 should be the goddamn standard. I personally think for these consoles, but that's another story. But the reason I'm saying that is if a developer decides we're better off having our game at 30 frames per second with no compromise, then okay. I can't tell someone who is way smarter than me making a game what they should do to satisfy some internet argument. It's ridiculous. Because here's the thing. I play a lot of games at 30 frames. Like I played Starfield in 30 frames on the Series X. Now, could I play it on my PC at a higher frame rate? Of course, and I did. But I didn't hop on my Series X and go, ugh, this is a slideshow. This is terrible. I played the game.
Yeah.
And I know people don't like to bring this into the console wars, but every damn game you play on the Nintendo Switch is at 30 frames. I don't see nobody complaining about that.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm saying is it comes down to a preference. Would we want 60 frames for Hellblade 2? Of course. But if the developer has decided we're better off having a consistent 30 frames per second with all the bells and whistles enabled to give you a visual and audio showcase for Hellblade 2, because that's what it's going to be. We already saw with the previews, and look, your mileage may vary on a preview, but it sounds like the combat's going to be just fine, because that was another concern as well. If they're giving us what we expect of the game, I'm not going to sit here and fuss over 30 frames. You know what I would say? And I know people don't like hearing this. If you're that damn concerned about frame rate, guess what? Go buy a PC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if frame rate is your deciding factor on something, and I'm not saying that to be so, I am being a little snarky, but if your deciding factor is I got to play this at a minimum of 60 frames, or I need it even higher at 100 frames or whatever, then you invest the money. Go look. NZXT sponsors me. Go holler at NZXT. They make a fantastic high-end PC. Costs you about $4,000. You can go buy that. They'll ship it right to your house quick. And you can have all the frames and the resolution that your heart desires. And you can play it that way. And I know I'm being a smart ass when I'm saying that. But the truth of the matter is we are currently asking way too much out of these $500 consoles. And that's just the truth. And I get that PlayStation has performed. And we already talked about this, but I get that PlayStation does a lot more performance modes than Xbox does on their first party lineup games. Understandable. Because remember, Redfall was supposed to be 60 frames at launch and they patched it in later. But if the game's fun, game's fun.
That's how I feel about Dragon's Dogma.
And that's not, and look, I know I'm being so messy on this podcast, but I just have to get it out. This isn't me coping. This isn't me damage controlling. This is me just being a normal human being and going, if something's fun, something's fun. I'm not going to sit here and argue about frame rate if the game's fun. I'm not. Yeah. Now on that note, because I do want to be fair to this, like I brought up Redfall. The Redfall criticism is 100% valid. That is valid. You want to know why? Because they told you it was 60 frames. They told you it was on the damn box that it was 60 frames. So you didn't deliver on something that you told me. So now I do have an expectation for it to be 60 frames, and you didn't deliver on that. And obviously Phil had to apologize for that last year and the whole thing. And they resolved it now. That, to me, that is fair criticism. That is 100% valid. Don't tell me it's going to be 60 frames and then wait until the last minute and go, oh, wait, it's not. No, I wouldn't be happy with that. But at no point did Ninja Theory ever tell anybody that it was going to be 60 frames per second. They never said that. This is the first time that we're hearing it. And I go, okay, now you could protest and say, I'm not playing that game because it's not what I want it to be. You're the customer. It's your money. You do what you want. Hey, look, I'm playing it. That's all I know. Because it looked good to me. Yeah. I'm not just going to sit here and fuss about 30 frames at all. And yes, I will be playing it on the console, and I'm sure I'll probably play it on PC as well, but it's not going to deter me having it at 30 frames per second. And like I said, my timeline is an effing mess because how dare I bring that up?